can't even get online. Can you get online on your phone?
I don't know. Let's see.
Our Wi-Fi here is just 9 shades of suck. And with my hand the way it is, I bought a whole new Wi-Fi setup.
What do you want me to look for?
Just go to my Facebook and see if it's live. I can't get on. Hold on. I think we're live right now. Sorry, everyone. We're having massive technical difficulties because it's either fuckbook or it's the sucky.
We are.
Fucking restream. Oh, good. Well, I knew we were going to be live on YouTube. You're not live yet. So wait a minute. Hold on. Let me bring in Kenya. Hi, I am Christian Day. This is Hoodoo Sen Louise. We are fabulous. And this is our fabulous friend Kenya. And then there's this little box that says guest number 2, which is supposed to be the magically invisible Candelo Kimbisa.
He's on his way.
Okay, because now he's a little box. I'm going to put like a clown face. That way when people show up late, their little box looks like a clown.
It kind of looks nice right now. It's like the little full moon looking thing in the clouds and all that kind of stuff. Hi, Madeline.
Can people see, Kenya, say something. Say hello. Can people hear Kenya?
Hello. Can you hear me?
If you guys can hear Kenya, please
say hi. I can hear Kenya.
Let her know that you can hear her. Just making sure that everybody has like sound and all that good shit around here.
What's so frustrating? So somebody said yep. I'm assuming that means yep. I can hear Kenya. Oh, good. I biggened the chat so I can see the chat with us.
That's like big print.
Big print. Good.
Lord.
Lord have mercy, Kirk.
Looks
sorry,
like
I can't call you that.
Looks like they can hear you.
So
everybody, welcome to this newest installment of Hex Offenders that's filmed in front of a live studio audience. I always wanted to say that. Remember the old sitcoms and stuff like that? They used to say that.
Yeah, they're showing our age.
And I don't care. That shit was good. But anyway,
RuPaul had a whole caftan episode the other night. Made me think of Mrs. Roper. Come and knock on my door.
Oh, God.
I have that moo-moo.
Anyway, Kenya is joining us along somewhere with somewhere out there.
There we go.
There's but he's in the chat. I need to see him in the thing here. Candelo.
Does he know how to get in?
Candelo, I sent you the link to the rendezvous. So you need to join the rendezvous through your Facebook link. Otherwise, we can't get you on the screen. Candelo, Candelo, where are you? I don't see you. Anyway, if you could text him to check his Facebook, because I'm sort of trying to bebop with this.
Yep.
Candelo, if you can hear my voice, ding. You need to go to your Facebook and to click that card. I don't know what it is. The rendezvous thing link that I sent you. That should bring you.
Is it in his messages?
Yeah, and it's in his text. Okay. You know me. I don't fuck around. I make sure I really get in your face. Yeah.
How long?
All right, I'm not seeing him in there. Okay, I don't know. It's supposed to send me a little bebop. Oh, there you are.
You found it.
There you are. Oh, he's got the hat. Hold on. Yep. Oh, we're going to get the hat going on
here. You're so stupid.
All right, I think we can see. Okay, we can see Candelo, but can we hear you? I don't hear it.
Candelo, say something. Can you say something, Candelo? Speak.
The fuck here?
Are you talking?
Hello.
Kenya, what is you doing?
Waving down at him.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, there you are. You were muted.
Salam alaikum.
Right.
Malaikum Salah, how are you?
Man,
Absolutely wonderful. I'm tired, but I am here.
Hold on.
Well, there
Gotta
comes
make
Sana.
sure Kirk's there in the shot. I had to squeeze our little area here so we could fit everybody else in here. Anyway. So today's episode, I finally got him to do a tough topic. I love the topics of, how great art thou, spiritual inner power of the universe, and can we make it better? But sometimes I like to touch on the nitty and the gritty. He's rolling his eyes.
Exactly. Every time I roll my eyes, everybody take a drink.
Please, you'd be fucking, there'll be alcohol poisoning.
Are we drinking now?
Yeah.
I have an empty cup, and they don't staff the store good late at night, so there's only one person, so I can't be like, get me water. So this week's fabulous episode of Hex Offenders is sure to offend. There's been a lot coming up lately with the subject of cultural appropriation versus appreciation versus a word that Kenya uses, fusion, that I really like, syncretization, and so many online arguments about what's what and, which of those things applies to each situation and, people saying you can do this, you can't do that, and this is wrong and this is wrong. And I wanted to kind of explore it, but I wanted to start just by saying that, Kirk and I was on his wall. I might have thrown a little shade on his wall, and a comment got deleted, and I'm not going to name names, but it was a little shady. I'll admit I was digging.
Yeah, it was shady.
Somebody dug at me first. I never dig first.
Yes, you do.
No,
but
I don't.
it was shady.
I never
Anyway.
draw first blood. I just draw more. But the point is, a lot more. But the point is, if I am incorrect, I'm happy to stand incorrect, to be corrected that, if I'm wrong and that, like I said it, of course, to be a little diggy, I'm diggy. But I'm a bitch. But it was a true thing that I believe I said. And so I reworded it, and I pretty much said the same thing without being as specific. And I noticed you left that up there. So obviously I was making a valid point that, I think there's this sort of gray area with all of this that, you want to respect the different traditions and pathways that you're reaching into. But this sort of gatekeeping that's going on has becoming,
Well,
I don't know. Why don't you start us off?
I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you this when it comes to that, because and please feel free to disagree with me if you think that I'm wrong. But the way that I came up and the way that I'm understanding things is that when you become a part of a tradition, or when you're working in a tradition, it is the tradition that molds you to it. It is not you that molds the tradition about what conveniences that you feel or deem to be possible, at the time. It's like, I don't feel like I should do this, but I'm going to bring this into this. Then what you're doing is you're taking a tradition and you're turning it into something completely different than it is, which in my opinion turns into a misrepresentation of what that is. And I'm going to tell you, for me, when I'm in a tradition, it is the tradition that molds me, and it is not the other way around. It is not me that's taking the tradition and saying, this is not convenient for me, this ain't conducive for what I'm doing, so I'm just not going to do that, but I'm going to take this over here instead and put it in its place. In my opinion, that, first of all, is it creates, a distortment of what the tradition actually is, number one. But number two, it also has the potential to be dishonoring to the sacrifices that were made so the damn tradition can be here to begin with. That's just me.
Kenya, what say you?
Well,
Here we go.
I guess we were good for a little while. Here we go. Okay, so
Girl, I love you, Kenya. I know you, Kenya.
I agree with that to a point, but then again, I'm GDI. I'm always independent. So I guess it would depend for me as to whether or not you're initiating or joining a tradition that has rigorous, preset roles, protocols, procedures, and rituals versus a growing and changing tradition, such as something that might be more geographically and ethnically based, that is expanding all the time. So I'm a little bit not with you on that. Let's say if I were like initiated into Alexandrian or Gardnerian or Georgian, and I'm not picking on the Wiccans, which I don't like that word either, but it's witches, but that's another issue. Witches, it's witches. Okay. Or if I were initiated into other groups here, like if I were initiated into the MST of A per se, and I was performing in their priesthood, there are things that I have to adhere to because that tradition, that body says, this is what is right, this is what is wrong, this is what is permitted, this is what makes this. However, the way that I practice and what I do practice, every time I think I want to join something, it's like, you know what? This is so not me. And before I start adulterating anything, I stay in things that are fluid. Because I know that for me, stay unaffiliated, but I know the core of the magic, the traditions, but not be in the tradition. I am free to mix and match and do what I need to do to get the job done. And that's why I always identify as a witch first, than more than anything else, because I make it work with what is relevant to what my need may be. That being said, there are certain things that I will do the same way every time because I know that that's what I was taught and they must not be changed. So that's my Bill Clinton-y bullshit answer to a point, but it's true for me.
Oh, Lord, yes.
Because it is the truth.
Candelo.
Yeah,
what's your way in here?
I like everybody's input on this, but guys, traditions are placed there by the specific ancestors that brought whatever tradition it may be. Okay, I don't think we need to deviate from that. The only thing that we can deviate from when we work on this is because of, like the sister said, something about geographics and moving and stuff like that. There would be the plants, the vegetation that's probably used, because as we all know, the vegetation that was used in, let's say, Africa or in Europe may not be readily available here. Okay, we understand that part of it. But tradition is tradition. Yes, it does evolve. We're not practicing the same as far as when it comes to the ATRs, to Lukumi, the same thing that is practiced in traditional African thing. But that was done because of adaptation. It wasn't done because someone came out his fucking ass with it. You understand? And now says, you know, now we're putting, let's say, a statue of Oshun, and it's Oshun because it's not fucking Oshun. You understand? So we have to stay true to the core of our traditions, whether it be whatever. The only one that constantly evolves is spiritualism.
Sure.
Because there's new people joining the spiritual ranks every fucking day.
Right. Now, when you say spiritualism, do you mean not like the table rapping?
No, I mean, what I'm saying is working with spirit. As the sister just said, okay, she does what works for her. Okay, so when we see these types of workings, we know that one person's medicine is another one's poison, and whatever shadow walks with you, all right, may tell you let's do it a different way, but that is not set in traditional African beliefs, especially when it comes to Lukumi, Ifa, Palo Mayumbe, and all these other traditions. There are a set ways of doing something. Although there are different houses, there are different branches of the same thing, there's still the traditional way of doing things.
Sure.
And everything will go back to that traditional way.
And if I can just add to that, what Candelo was saying, because you said something very interesting about how some of these traditions evolved because of adaptation. And what I wanted to do is I just want to kind of like add to that just a little bit, because there is a difference. There is a difference in when it comes to an evolution that is based out of a need and an evolution that is based out of convenience. Some of the evolutions of some of these traditions evolved because of a need for survival. And I'll even give you a perfect example of that. During the transatlantic slave trades, the Middle Passage, when the voodoo came over to Haiti, the country was primarily Catholic. And the only way for that tradition to survive without the slaves being beaten, murdered, and all that other horrible and horrific things was to take the mask of Catholicism to put into what was actually going on, so they could say, oh, we just doing a mass for St. Moses, when really they're doing a mass for Odan Widow or what have you. So there is a difference, in the evolution that comes out of a need for survival versus one that comes out of just, because it's convenient for me at this point in time.
I want to add to that something. When I think of that, when we, the subject of this show is the crossing the cultures of magic. When I think of that syncretization, that, coming together, a blending of things, I think of it in terms of evolutionary biology, because there's two kinds of evolutionary biology. Mm-hmm. There's that slow evolution over time, which is what most people tend to think about. But you also have the burst of evolution, which is why we have to get a different flu shot every year, because those viruses evolve at such rapid rates. So there's the convenience, but there's also the duration. There are times when things are slowly syncretized together spiritually, but then you have those burst moments, which, of course, the slave trade would be part of that, because when you immediately come into this new place and you're told, you've got to do this, well, you immediately come up with a solution. I think where I would disagree is I think, while I don't generally think you should muck about with things as a matter of convenience, I think necessity and convenience can be a fine line sometimes, because if, in the case of the slaves, they weren't able to go back to Africa to get those original herbs.
Right.
However, they are now, and, you don't see all these planes because it is convenient to keep doing it that way. Now that they can actually go back and get the original herbs they would have used, it's not convenient. Now, so when you're talking about convenience, it's kind of a spectrum. Are you just doing it willy-nilly, or is it really going to be this royal fucking pain in the ass to traipse over to fucking Nigeria to get that one goddamn plant and wherever? Well, I would argue, don't bother. Use what is working here. So those kind of syncretizations can sometimes come out of convenience, that's all I'm saying. But it's a spectrum. There's really convenient and, really inconvenient. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Thoughts on that?
Well, again, I don't know of anyone, well, at least not in the Lukumi tradition that I am in now, which has been striving in the Caribbean and in the diaspora for, hundreds of years, who goes actually back to Nigeria or to the Congo or to Dahomey to get herbs. I mean, it's been an integral part of what they're doing with the adaptation of what we found. Okay, so that none of that is going on. And I do get your point of view, Christian. I do get your point of view, but it's not happening because it's become as such that these plants are the ones that we use. A lot of them have similarities to the things that were used, or maybe a off-breed or a hybrid of those types of plants, being because the subtropical weather and the climate and all these things.
But let me ask you, because I just faced something similar to this today. We have our spell kits that we sell at Hex and Omen, and each of them has a certain object, like a key or a stone or whatever. And the protection spell kit has what the hell is it? Apache's Tear. And apparently they're so hard to get. They're like selling them for $5 a stone. And of course, that's not going to work for the spell kit. So I've been using this same spell kit since 2008. So there is a sort of tradition, but there's years into it so far. 11 years. But I had to sit there and go, okay, what other stone could we use? Let's say 3 or 4 of the most important herbs in North American Lukumi were to suddenly die off in a crop. are you breaking tradition if you suddenly substitute them with something you've never used before?
Well, that would not be. I don't think that would be the case, because there are several different plants towards each orisha. Just like for the Loire, we know that these plants are used for this one. We know that these plants are used for that one. There isn't, excuse me, there isn't one plant. There isn't one type of thing for them.
But what if there were 10 and they all died?
Well, see, now you're coming up with scenarios of
because there are times where that happens.
Well, but in a case, if I can just interject real quick on that, but in a case like that, again, we go back to what constitutes an evolution out of necessity.
Yes.
And that is one of the things that would constitute an evolution out of necessity, as opposed to one out of convenience. And just to go on to the point that was made earlier with regard to plants and that was over in in the Congo and Yoruba and stuff like that that were used then that are not readily available here now. You can get them. Well, realistically, can you? Because think about whenever you have things coming over from customs and stuff like that. Because let me tell you something. I've been through customs, and let me tell you, Miami customs, I hate you motherfuckers with them. I will go on. I hate you motherfuckers with a passion, because I've been in the little room on more than one occasion.
But there's a lot of things
but they always. But what I'm saying is that like that in theory, yes, absolutely.
I get Crete,
but
I get Dittany of Crete shipped from Crete.
But some things you can, and some things you can, and and I can tell you that that in theory is absolutely.
I guess where I'm coming from is
I don't know.
I feel like there's a gray area there where, we have to allow for some adaptation. It's kind of like porn. You know it when you see it. When I see someone saying,
"You are so stupid,"
and I don't care. I know this is fucking shady. You can all get mad at me. You can all get mad at me for saying this. But if somebody comes out and says, anything that's in my personal ancestry is part of my hoodoo or my practice, and therefore Beltane is a hoodoo holiday for me.
No.
Well, I know she's going to be calling you all screaming, but the fact is, I think when it becomes that excessive, you recognize it. But are we really going to, I didn't understand everybody bitching over the fucking butter candle. I'm sorry. If you stuck a butter candle in my hand, I would make it work. What if that was the only fat you had available?
Well,
I suppose there's liposuction.
A candle is a candle, Christian. At least that's what I
just
think.
Remember the freak out on social media.
Because all these candles that we have today weren't readily available or easy for people to use back in the day. So let's get off the bullshit with the people with the fucking butter candle, because they have no concept of fucking necessity.
Hey, butter's the only thing. I'll get liposuction and use that for a candle.
But just to go on.
Wait a minute.
Ken is weighing in here. Hold on.
Wait a minute. The easiest example that I could see where we would have to do an adaptation, and I'm not an initiate. Let me be very, very clear. I am not an initiate in an ATR. I'm an initiate in a couple of other things, but not in an ATR. And I was taught by somebody who was taught by somebody who was taught by somebody. I can give you my direct lineage as far as what I learned as far as root work, and that's Gloria Fanning. But some things must be done the same way. But they cannot be varied for them to work properly. Some things are like that, but we do have to make substitutes. Now, in certain cases, we know that iron is protective. We didn't have access to the same kind of iron. I don't know about anybody else's black salt. I cannot speak to that. I know what I was taught. For black salt to be black salt, it has to have iron. I'm guessing that we made the adjustment, and that's why we started burning the skillets. And by the way, I was taught that iron, if you're making salt, has to be burned.
I think India just puts in food coloring.
But no. But the thing is that we made the adaptation and started doing that. I'm quite sure we weren't using regular skillets. We were using other metal implements, but that has changed. That's something that would have been adapted to industrialization. throwing water out of the door to the east probably came from the Islamist or Islamic slaves that were brought here and continued their practice of prayer. And there's documentation of that before the hoodoo and before the spiritual conversion and fusion happened. Now, you and I both know that that's not a Muslim prayer and that's not a Muslim practice. Mm-hmm. But as we know, their practices were destroyed. All slaves that were brought here were not Christian. They were not Congo Christian, and they were not still African traditional religion. We had all kinds of different kinds of, I hate to say the word kind over and over again. We had many variations of nationalities here. I'm only bringing that up because some people in my family still have that in there. Mm-hmm. Just like I have another side of my family that practices mountain magic. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying it's not that simple. We do adapt, we do change, and it's not always correct to make that change. Mm-hmm. Now, things get lost.
So what do you, to throw this question to the room, basically,
and to the audience.
And to the audience, by the way, you can take questions. Why, where do we draw that line of when adaptation is okay? How do you, because that seems to be where the big argument lies on the internet and the social media is, even the people arguing the most against adaptation will adapt something. So how do we find that line for ourselves? I'll start with Sen Moise here.
No, go ahead. I'm just looking at the...
Oh, Candelo, you start.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was actually doing something while we were talking. Where does this adaptation start?
I'm saying basically, how do you find that line? Oh, here we go.
How do we find that line? You know what? How do we find that line? Well, dude, through, oh God, I guess we would find the line through things not being readily accessible to us. Okay. My whole thing is that you don't do it just because you want to. You understand? Because, I do know that adaptation because of the diaspora is a big thing. Okay. But most of us are not being shipped across the ocean somewhere against our wills of these days. Okay. It's just not happening.
No.
If I keep criticizing Trump,
I might. Tradition is tradition. Sister just said she has a wonderful lineage of people that worked hoodoo, not hoodoo, root work, and mountain magic. There are things that have always been done, and I'd be damned if a Kethi or Shiva or even something that is readily used today, as in Saint Espiodite, were things that were part of hoodoo and conjure. They just weren't.
Also, Antonio.
Okay, so these are.
What about Hecate?
Or Hecate. Yeah, that's the name I was trying to come up with. I didn't even remember the deity's name.
I'm going to
hell. And it's not disrespectful.
You are going to hell, and I'm going to send you there, asshole.
And those are not.
It depends on what you're doing.
Yeah, and those are not traditional forms of working this. Now, if you work with Hecate and Hecate works with you, fine by me. God bless you and Hecate. But please do not say that Hecate is Oshun, or that Hecate is a part of traditional hoodoo, exactly. Or the hoodoo Hecate,
exactly.
The hoodoo Hecate mouthwash, whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? Because it's not part of it.
I just want to say real quick
that out of there.
We are, I think Tiana said, I am monitoring the chat. In fact, we have a chat app that compiles all of the chats from all of the Facebooks, well, when it works, right, and YouTube. But sometimes it repeats certain messages over and over again, so it's sometimes hard to see. But we are seeing the questions, and that's actually what I spend most of my time looking at. Kenya, how do you find that line?
It depends on what magic I'm applying. What am I doing? Am I doing magic? Am I performing a spiritual practice? Am I doing some sort of devotion? What am I doing at that time? That's where the line draws for me. if I'm doing a spiritual practice, if I'm doing a devotion, a prayer, a thanks, or some sort of asking for a divine intervention, or sometimes, I actually have been known to bless. It can happen. Not very often. It can happen, it's not thundering. But the thing is that it really depends on what I'm doing. There are limits to what I can adapt, okay? There's just flat out limits because of how I was taught. I'm not saying I can't work with Hecate. I'm not saying that. I can. But I cannot bring her into what I'm doing over here if it's what I was taught to do in a certain way. But I can work with her, I can probably have her in the room or on the table. But that doesn't make my magic any less.
Right.
Okay? Mm-hmm. I can work with whoever I want to work with. But if I'm doing something in a prescribed fashion, then I will do it in that prescribed fashion. And if that means I have a little friend on the side, a God that loves me and I love them, or they love me and I love her, then that should be fine.
And they love me for loving them.
But the way in which I do it will not change. Mm-hmm. And if anything, I'll amplify my practice by being able to use it with a different thing, a different kind of practice. But the two won't merge.
I have a question together. I want to, but I first want to say before, this is a question only, but I have a very simple rule of thumb as far as all this is concerned. And it's sort of like a few different bullet points, very small ones. But the first is...
Tap it out, Helen.
Eat me. The first is...
No, wait. Before you do it, I got to finish my one. I almost forgot to finish this
sorry.
Part.
Okay. I'm sorry.
But going back to one more thing, I almost forgot because there's been a lot of joking about it in the chat, and I did want to address it. As I said, I practice root work and conjure. Not necessarily hoodoo, because hoodoo to me is a commercialized version, an access point for people to do it who are lay practitioners. Mm-hmm. So I use the word hoodoo loosely. But that being said, I still celebrate Beltane. I still celebrate all the different religious festivals and the seasonal and equinox festivals, but that's not tied into my hoodoo. But that doesn't mean I can't practice them. But they are not the same.
There you go.
Well, my bottom line is this.
I can't practice them.
Rule number one, nobody else decides but me. I'm sitting on the throne. I'm the fucking queen. I will take it under advisement. Yes, all these people will have opinions about what I should do, whether it's appropriation, appreciation, invasion, colonization, whatever the fuck they're going to say. Ultimately, I make the decision. And when I say I mean all of you. I think each of you, in my opinion, I give you the grace. You make your decision. That's number one. Number two, I think that my goal is to always respect the different traditions. So, for example, when I created my Hecate oil and I contacted Priestess Melissa Mayhem, who's a priestess of Hecate, when I add tobacco in there, she flipped out because it's it's post-Columbian exchange. It wouldn't have been something in a Hecate oil. So I really stuck to the old ingredients of those periods. And so for that, I'll be very, very emphatic. But as an initiate, we have a very Kabbalistic way of thinking in the sense of the Ein Sof, the limitless light, and that it branches out and that every goddess is a face of that divine feminine. So we might, in a prayer, call on many faces of the goddess and include everyone from Hecate to Urzuli to whoever in the sense that they represent that feminine. But that's an initiatory type of thing. And so I try to always have that respect, but those boundaries are my own. And finally, for me, I think, and frankly, I think it's true of most people, they just won't say it. I think everyone has a price. In other words, I always use that example, if you're wandering around a Tibetan temple with the monk who's giving your tourists a tour, and you come into this room and there's this giant tapestry, and he said, oh, this is the ancient, I'll try not to use my accent, I know it upsets people. You see this ancient, tapestry mandala thing, and the monk says to you, I am actually 1,000 years old. Every day we initiate new people, and they come into this priesthood and they look at the tapestry, and once they do, they live forever and have eternal youth. But it's only for our monks. It will work for anybody, but if you do it, you're stealing our culture. you know, you go wander along with the tour and somehow you get lost. You end up in the room with the tapestry that's going to make you live forever in eternal youth. Who the fuck ain't going to look? And maybe there's that one person that won't, but what if there was some, you know, Buddhist talisman that was really only supposed to be used by people from a certain culture, but it was guaranteed to save you from a bullet wound, and somebody had a gun pointed at your mother, and you had that thing in your hand, and you're sitting there saying, well, if I use this, I'm appropriating this culture, but it's the only fucking... Everyone has a price. I mean, those are extreme examples, but my point is, there comes a time where people will say, well, maybe it's wrong to do this, but... I mean, do we all have a butt somewhere other than the one in our chair?
I'm gonna do everything I have to do.
I believe I do not have that butt, you know, because there are ramifications, or there are things that will happen to you for fucking around with shit you ain't supposed to be fucking around with. Okay, rather I'm not gonna touch
you
that
wouldn't even
goddamn
be fucking
tapestry.
tempted.
I'm not. Well, I might look at it and run through my head 150 times whether or not I should touch that tapestry. But you know what, bro? Let me live my normal life instead of touching that and live 100 years of fucking agony. You know what I mean? So we have to see that there are set pretenses to this, especially when you're dealing with the ATRs and DTRs. We're talking about living, breathing entities. Okay, you do not want to piss one of these things off. Okay, one of these entities off. Let's not call them things. Okay, you know, but my God, there was someone with a voodoo veve on the side of a fucking lake, talking about that they were talking to Yemaya. Okay. What kind of foolishness is that? And then, of course, you get the 1,000 other people. Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so pretty. And you get 1,000 other idiots doing the same fucking thing.
Yeah, the peanut gallery.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in my metaphor, okay, let me just say, in my metaphor, since I created it, there are no ramifications for that tapestry. I'm going to fucking look at that tapestry. I'm sorry. I'm looking at it. I want to live forever.
You saw my chat. Ha.
Where is this magical chat? Because I don't see any.
On YouTube.
Well, it's in everything. We have a chat that sees every chat. Like, we have a chat where we see comments on everything that is out there. I want to throw this out there because this is going to just light the fire here. So Russell asks, we have a diverse panel here. What are y'all's thought on white people working hoodoo or conjure?
Oh, Lord.
Right in for the kill.
Right into it.
We'll start with Kenya.
I'm gonna need a drink. Come
on,
why is the rum gone?
Yeah, come on, let's go. Yeah, here you go, huh?
All right, here we go. Here we go. Ready? Because I said this the other day, and I'm gonna say it again. Here we go. Before we go any further, let's talk about what is hoodoo. I have to give you what my understanding and definition of it is before I can answer that question, so you have the contextual clues you need. So, now that I've done my prison speech, here we go. Hoodoo is a commercialized amalgamation for people to have an entry point into the world of root work and conjure. It is not pure slave and African liberation and conjure, as was adapted and developed here for the African diaspora. And I'm saying that to say that what is being commercialized as hoodoo is different than that pure line. What is commercialized is the difference between going to the Chinese or Cantonese restaurant downtown and going to the back of house and eating with the people who know how to cook from the culture.
Which I used to do. I used to work in a Chinese restaurant. I ate what they ate.
So you know it's different. Now, that being said, if I look at you and I tell you I'm practicing root work and conjure, and I'm doing it according to the line that I was taught from, which is going to be from Mississippi up through Chicago into Detroit, that's what I'm practicing. And it's going to have all those elements in it. But I also know... I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. Someone just put in a thing. There were also Irish slaves who practiced. Do me a favor and get rid of that person. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I missed something.
No, I'm looking at the chat room now.
Well, there were Irish slaves. There were indentured servants.
Okay, I'm getting to them. It's gonna be okay. All right, I'm not gonna leave anybody out. I got them. Okay. Now, here's the thing. I can only tell you about that line. My family also was enslaved in Mississippi, so I've got that line. That's what I'm looking at. Rootwork and conjure is very much about, and I don't like to say it's everything about ancestors, but that is a huge part of it. Absolutely. Because that lineage, that bloodline gives you the traditions inside your family that continues that line. Absolutely. Just like Gloria Fanning's line. However, going back to the original question, because we're not just talking about that when we say the word hoodoo in this country, we're talking about other influences that have been brought in and syncretized. We're talking about the Scots traditions of evangelism and Christianity back in the 18th and 19th century down there. And I said Scots. I didn't say Irish. I said Scots. We are also talking about the indentured servant descendants of the indentured Irish. However, it would have been their descendants, which is another thing. I'm going to give them time to do some more research so they can enjoy themselves. This can be a wonderfully rewarding experience for them to find out that they were not indeed the same kind of chattel slavery that we were practicing, the kind of Christianity that was infused from the Congo Queen who converted in the 1700s, but that's their exploration journey, and I wish them well. Now, the rest of the influences that are coming in will be from depending on the route you're taking. If it went south, you're going to have Creek Nation or Creek Native practices, as well as possibly Choctaw, Geechee if you go in the other direction. It really depends, because quote unquote what has become known as hoodoo is no longer that pure line. Now, as far as quote unquote whites or European Americans being able to practice that, what is known as hoodoo, you probably could, because it is not that pure line. It is not what we are talking about. We're not sitting in back of house eating the pure liberation theology, liberation conjure, liberation practices that, I don't want to talk about, what's his name? His name was Jack, I think, when he brought his implements over on the ship, that so-called Vesey Rebellion, I think it was. But the point was, it's not going to be pure. It's just flat out not. I'm not saying it's not going to work for you. You can still use doctrine of signatures and make a plant work for you. If you have magic, if you can work magic, you can work magic. But if I pick up a lamp of oil, of tallow, of beef tallow, or like my daddy did, I go out to the yard and I go out and put my hands in that soil, and I can make that ball from that soil, and I do something else that I'm not going to talk about here. And I can look into it and make what I need to make and learn what's going to happen.
Some of these questions I don't even dare ask. Some of these questions. Well, so someone took this as, should white people not bother taking hoodoo or voodoo classes? I don't think that's what you're saying, is it?
Nobody said that. All I said was it's gonna be a little bit different.
Well, I'm going to throw one out to Candelo. We got some of these questions I'm scared to.
You want me not to say it out loud? Because I'm going to say it.
I want you. I want the both of you to say anything you want to say. This is that kind of show. We have, this is Huda San Luis. People are asking the name. I need to put little titles on these. Kenya Kovac.
I got a problem with candles, because really candles are a substitute, because we should be using lamps if we want to go way back.
Mm-hmm.
Kenya,
amen.
You got that right.
We've got Kenya Kovac, who's the Detroit witch, and she does the Detroit Conjure Festival.
I just talk a lot. Don't listen to me.
And Mile High Conjure Gala host and root worker in Palero, Candelo Cambisa is the smoking dude there. The cigarette man on the cigar dude there.
A cigarette.
The bottom right. No, but I'm trying to decide how. God, the questions. So Michael Carell says. What is it? What about gay Paleros? Is that, because I know some people.
Michael always tries to put me in
But the funny part about it is that I did a show with Michael. I did a show with you, if you recall, on Widdershins, and I do believe that we talked about that.
No, I was actually one of the first.
Well, some people say there shouldn't be gay Paleros. It's breaking tradition.
Well, brother, it's honestly, brother. Let me tell you something. Me and Michael broke ground on this like maybe 4 years ago, but he knows it's a hot topic and it's a hot button topic, so he likes to bring it up. Okay.
You know, I love to push buttons.
So listen. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this again publicly. Okay. These new ways of thought are basically new and very misogynistic. Okay. Let's say this. There have always been gay people. There will always be gay people. Okay? There have always been gay people inside of the ATRs or DTRs, no matter what people say here. Because you have all these so-called woke people, okay, that have put their toes inside the ATR water now, and think that they can say whatever happened in Europe, whatever happened in Cuba, whatever happened in Africa. They think that this is all new. Okay, there is nothing new up under the sun. Okay, there have always been, there will always be, okay, gay people inside of Palo, the ATRs, and every other spirituality there is. Just like there's white, there is black, there is yellow. I know people from Asia who are initiated into the ATRs. So please, grow the fuck up.
Here again.
No spirit, and check yourself, because if you're that thing towards one person, you're probably that hateful against yourself. That's it. That's all I got to say about it.
Now, I was going to avoid this question, but I can't.
Tell her I said she needs to give it back to you.
No, I need to. So somebody asked, I'm asking the pushy button questions. Hold on. Okay, so what about past lives? If you were a slave in a former life, and that has followed you to this life, regardless of your nationality, would it, now, what about that? I mean, I was Genghis Khan in a former life. I'm convinced. I just know.
Oh my God.
Child, I don't know what the hell that has to do with appropriation. Okay, I don't have the slightest idea. Okay, I'm trying to live in this fucking life. All right, and try to make this one the best I can. And this one, this is the important one.
Have a moment.
Okay. As far as I know, we do believe in reincarnation in the ATR. Okay. But honestly, that fast life has nothing to do with what we choose now. Okay. Now, as far as white people being inside of a hoodoo and ATRs and all that stuff, because that's a new way of thinking. All right. As far as I know, okay, the integrator of certain types of people from other ethnicities was Andres Facundo Petit, okay, in Cuba. All right. But believe it or not, brother, okay, all these traditions, what people don't see is that all these traditions, you must step in front of that deity. Okay. You must step in front of that Egon, that ancestor. Okay, you must ask ancestors or the deity or the thing to call, and ask whether or not this person is able or can get initiated into that particular branch of whatever it is that you're doing. Okay, so I'm gonna say this one time: who the fuck are you to question what spirit says?
Amen.
Because if you believe in these types of traditions, you are following spirit, or you're following a deity or an energy or whatever the fuck it may be. So if that spirit brung that white person, brung that gay person, brung that crippled person, brung that fat person, that skinny person, whatever person he brings to your house, whether rocking, crawling, giggling, laughing, or doing whatever the fuck.
Look in the fridge.
If that spirit has brung that person to your door, and that spirit says, you must initiate this person.
Well, I mean,
guess what?
I think when you're talking about cultural appropriation, you have to separate, like, people wearing a Native American costume for Halloween versus spirituality. Because in religion, I mean, cultures often wanted to propagate their gods and see them go to other places. So it's like, well, when they say only Native Americans should use sage, well, that's ridiculous. If it works, you should use it. And if it's only supposed to be used by certain people, well, are you saying that it doesn't really work, that it's just a superstition? I mean, where do we draw the line? I hate the smell of sage, but, you know, if I liked it, I might use it.
That's not what I heard being said, because when I was in my training, you know, and I was told that this medicine was given to us to use. It is when you try to, don't do that, honey. My husband being bad. It is when you are trying to mimic, mock, or present the religious or spiritual body of it, that you got a problem. Because you can't just pick up sage and do what they do and say you're doing what they do, because it's not the same. I mean, it really comes down to which sage are you using. Are you using the sage to do the medicine? Are you using the sage to make space? You really should know why you're using what you're using and what it is you're using and how you're using it. But
as opposed to the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, just woo. You know?
Oh, just okay. I'm just saying, you could use a plant. A plant has its own energy. I am very animist when it comes to that. However, there's a difference between using sage as a smoke fumigation and using sage in a spiritual practice, and using sage in a spiritual practice related to a specific indigenous religious ceremony. There's differences.
What say you, Candelo? I see you got that look on your face.
Well, I got something to drink now.
As far as sage goes, I don't like it. I don't like the smell of it. I think it's repulsive. I think my spirits don't like it either, you know. But, you know, I am a person that believes in spirit. And I have very little, if any, Native American blood, okay? I have none. So I choose to respect them by not touching their sacred herbs, okay? Now, I have a shrine set up for Native Americans. Now, why do you think I have a shrine set up for Native Americans? Because I am on their land.
Thank you. That's a huge part of magical power.
Okay, because I am on their land. So
Kenya, you and I were just talking about that on the phone.
For letting me live on their land peacefully. Okay? I do not do anything with them. I just give them offerings, and that's it. You know why? Because they're not part of my ancestral cord. But I give them that respect because I know they were here before me.
Yeah, but see, there are three magics I use. Mm-hmm. And even though I wrote a whole book about the dead, I did say on my wall the other day, don't get so caught up in the magic of your ancestors that you forget your own magic. Because there's the magic of your ancestry, there's the magic of your inner being, but there's also the magic of place. And so you can draw power, even though they're not your ancestors. That interaction that you're creating right there is drawing on the energy of the land. I believe that will benefit you. Mm-hmm. Strongly.
Zen Moise, please. You've been sitting there rolling your eyes.
You know I've been rolling my damn eyes for
say what you gotta say, bitch.
Whole minute. So I'm gonna backtrack just a little bit because everybody be talking. So and I'm just taking in a lot of that. But the one thing that I will say, when it comes to these traditions and the practice of them, understand that the magic or the work in that tradition, the magical side of it, is only one half of the equation. Because in all of these traditions, in conjure, in voodoo, in lukumi, the other side of that also needs to be brought up, because the other side is equally as important, and that is the culture in and of itself. because it is in the culture in and of itself that the magic comes out. It is by taking both sides of that, bringing them together to actually not only have a well-balanced working knowledge of how to do things, but also keeping within like the actual like powers of that tradition. And so, yeah, can somebody, can a white person be in like in the voodoo and a gay person be in the palo, et cetera, et cetera? Of course. If the spirit says that they're supposed to come in there, then guess what? Who the hell is anybody else to say no? Number one. But number two, when the spirit calls somebody, it is also the responsibility of the person that they call to embrace not only the work, but to also begin to start seeing the culture for what it is and moving in that line, because it is in that in and of itself that is going to grow not only your work, but also the knowledge that you have and how to move forward in that. Let me tell you a little something, okay? I have gotten bullshit from a lot of motherfuckers, especially in America. In America. Here we go. Shut the hell up now. Especially in America, about me being an ungan in the voodoo. And they be like, blah, 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 why you can't do that? And you appropriating this. Let me tell you something. How exactly am I appropriating anything if, number one, I have embraced that culture and have an active understanding of everything that goes on, to the point to where you cannot land in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and not every motherfucker there know who I am. Number one. Number two, my godmother, like I lived with her. Every day, in and out, what was I doing? Learning the work, learning the things that I didn't know about the culture, embracing and immersing myself in all of that. So understand, the work is one side, but the culture of those things is another, and you have to have both to come together in order to create not only the balance, but to pave the way for the growth that you need to go from just a simple worker to a priest to an elder.
But don't,
that's the way that it goes.
Wait. Don't people of color who go to Haiti for initiation get a different initiation than white people?
What color? Which color?
Exactly.
I'm just saying what I saw online.
Green,
I
blue.
saw something online.
What you talking about?
They said that black people get a different initiation than white people in Haiti. And
I really. So how many?
Haitian. So I need a clarification on that, Alex, for 2000.
Thank you. And the jury is out.
Well, I'm just saying, when I went, and I am going to do her accent. Sorry if you're offended. I know she'll love it because I love her. But
you don't even do it right. But
I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. So I went to Marie Carmel. She's a mambo. She's from Haiti. She's fabulous. Dresses lovely. Just it's the most spectacular. Really understands the magic and the aesthetic. And she said to me, because I went to her and I said,
the only okay, wait, before you say that, okay, the only difference between a foreigner going inside of a country to get initiated is the price.
Oh,
why?
It's not just that with her.
It's just the price. No. Why is it the price?
No, it's
because
not just
a person in Cuba that lives in Cuba, that has lived in Cuba, is not going to pay the same thing that an American is going to pay to get initiated in Cuba.
It's not just the price. When I went to Marie Carmel and I said, so-and-so said, if you're a black person in America, you're going to get a deeper, different initiation than a white person. She said to me, and I know I'm going to do it wrong, I don't care, there are powers they will never get and spirits they will never be given because they were not born in Haiti. Right. And that was pretty much that.
And to elaborate on what she meant by that,
I think it's obvious.
Was that no, it wasn't. Really, what do you think it was?
I can tell you what it meant. I think it meant that there are certain traditions in Haiti that are considered part of the land, and they don't want to go outside of it.
There are certain things. There are secret sociétés.
I knew you were going to say societies. I knew it.
You already know. I'm talking about the Macaya, I'm talking about the Bizango, and I'm talking about the Sampuel.
Well, I know a Bokor up in Salem.
That's not a société, asshole. Anyway, but there are certain sociétés down there that unless you are born and raised on the island, you're not going to get. And that's just the way that it is. It is that's just like the obeah in Jamaica. Unless you're from Jamaica, born and raised, you're not going to get it. That's just the way that it is that. But that's a little bit different than what we're talking about. With that. That's not exactly that's not the same thing.
And the same thing is said in Cuba. There are certain societies in Cuba that will never leave Cuba.
Exactly.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that's and that now, like there's a line there is a line in a series in a show that I used to watch called Carnival.
Oh, I love that.
Was such a really good show. And in this line, like all of a sudden, like this girl, she gets, I don't know, possessed by something. I don't remember what the hell it was, but she said something that was very, very profound to me. And it actually means a lot. Like just even in like what we're talking about. But the line was every prophet in his house is what she said. And I think about that for a minute. When you're starting to think about like what all of that, what that entails is that like houses have their leadership and how they're going to do the things that they're going to do. Is every house going to do it the same? No, they're not necessarily going to do it the same. However, there is, there are rules and there are traditions within those houses that are always going to be maintained. And the elders of the same are going to be the ones that's looking out for it. And I always thought that was profound, but it has a lot to speak to what we're talking about as well. People talk about they want to learn this and they want to learn that, and what says this tradition and this tradition is, good, bad, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. When did we forget to go to our elders about that? When have we forgotten that, you see?
And I want to have to do the work. I want to interject into this that, a lot of the traditions we've been talking about tonight are cultural-based traditions.
Yes.
Such as Palero, Hoodoo.
Every tradition has a culture in and of itself.
Except, as witchcraft is an initiatory path. And as such, if you look at initiatory traditions, there's a different sort of mindset because they tend to be more syncretic by nature. For example, the cult of Isis grew up from Egypt all over the world. And it would embrace, so for example, the Roman Diana would become syncretized with Isis on purpose. They would basically say, it's almost the opposite of some of these cultural traditions, because the research we've been doing for Brian's book has brought out a lot of this, in the ancient world, the initiatory cults, which are very different than sort of the cultural traditions in that they will see all the goddesses as Isis. Oh, she's just another face of Isis. So we can embrace, this goddess and stick her into this initiatory tradition. They're by nature sort of moving, changing, evolving, and absorbing. And it's interesting in the research I've been doing into these groups how much they contrast to culture, because as opposed to protecting culture, they tend to go out there and absorb it. The Romans especially did this, and the Greeks. They would just go around and say, you can keep practicing your faith because it's really just another faith of ours. And they would just suck it all in together. It was almost the opposite of all this protectionism that you see.
That's where everything changes, okay? Because let's go back to the ATRs for a minute. Because I don't know if the European concept also has that. When we Moyuba is calling on the ancestors or remembering the ancestors, okay? If you're white, yellow, black, or whatever you are, you're going to call not only your ancestors, but you're going to call your godfather's ancestors, your godmother's ancestors, and all the way down, you're going to call down everyone that is on that spiritual lineage. Do you understand?
In initiatory witchcraft, our ancestors are our lineage, and they're not necessarily biological.
Exactly. It was the same thing in the ATRs.
Mm-hmm. By the way, ATR is African.
Talk about chanting out stuff.
African traditional religion. Someone asked what ATR was.
Yes, ATR. There's two ways of saying diasporic traditions and African traditions. But we have to remember that there is a lineage to this. Okay, and these ancestors are called upon. Okay, and half of these people screaming this shit online, okay,
have no
idea of their ancestral lineage. Okay, how far it goes back.
You mean in terms of the spiritual, not
as
just
as far as not only the mundane, but the spiritual also.
Well, because who initiated you in witchcraft, and who initiated? I don't know if this is true in hoodoo, but I'm guessing who initiated you in Haitian voodoo really matters a lot in terms of.
Of course it does.
You know, them being a form of ancestor. And here's the thing.
Yeah,
you can only get so let me tell you something. There are boundaries to everything. I find that when I look at these conversations online, they tend to vacillate between race as color and race as ancestry in certain circles of these arguments. And you know, when the color part doesn't work, you know, and I know you face this, Kenya, where it was like, well, you're not dark enough, or you know, or why aren't you doing voodoo of your ancestors? But that DNA aspect only goes so far. I'm 0.25% pygmy. I guarantee you, if I go over to wherever
them damn pygmies are everywhere.
Let me tell you that those fucking pygmies. If I go and I meet my pygmy ancestors, I want to honor your traditions. They aren't going to have anything in my size. They're going to look at me like I have two fucking heads and I'm too tall. And they're probably not going to want anything to do with me. And I could sit there with my DNA, or my ancestors include the pygmies, and it's not going to help. I think that there is something to be said, you know, for the idea that race and culture and all those things are more than just DNA and family. You might be adopted by parents who have a certain faith and have no idea who your ancestors are. And so if you're an adopted child in Haiti and you're initiated into Haitian voodoo, you don't know who your physical ancestors are, so you may have to rely more on your spiritual ancestors. Or just, you know, put it out there and hope that whoever your ancestors are show up.
And we do, because we're all a mismatch of things, okay? We're all a mixed match of things, and when it comes to spirit, sooner or later they will reveal themselves to you. Okay.
Always do.
By either certain traits that you may have, or your fear of fucking drowning, or whatever it may be. Okay. But we have to know that these things have lineages. Okay. You just said that witchcraft also has lineages, and it's important. It's
absolutely important. It's crucial.
And it's important that
the power comes from that.
Yeah, that's where the power comes from. Exactly. That's why we Muyuba. We say prayers to our Congo spirits. We say prayers to our Yoruba spirits. Mm-hmm. I have very little Yoruba. Okay, mine's is mostly Congo. So, you know, again, where does the linking come in the ATRs? Okay, it comes through initiation and through the speaking of the founders' names. Let's say that. To the speaking of the elders' names, okay, and whatever it may be. But that's where the main parrot comes from, okay? Well, we honestly believe that without Egun, there's nothing, all right? Without an ancestral spirit, there is nothing. There is no Palo, there's no voodoo, there's no Wicca, there's no, Wicca.
I think you have to consider the spiritual ancestry. Also because, like, let's take a person of African descent who decides to immerse themselves in Apollo.
Right.
But they do their DNA and they find out their entire African DNA comes from an area of Africa that would have never touched Apollo. Does that make it somehow invalid because it's no longer their, it's black ancestry, but it's not their ancestry.
Right.
I don't think that invalidates it. I did want to let Kenya's saying on the chat, she's sort of bubbling over there with her wine. So I want to hear something. She's got something to say. What's the trouble? What's the tea?
I'm not drinking wine. Kyle gave me something called Smirnoff.
Oh my God. Okay.
Oh Lord.
Smirnoff.
Sounds like a good time. Give me one. I gotta get myself some more.
Right. See, that's what I should be drinking: water and being a good person. But here we go.
Oh no, don't be good.
Okay, so I just want to point out this part. Going back a little bit. As far as the importance of ancestors, I am one of those firm believers that you cannot live only in the past and use your ancestors to fight your battles. But I will say this, the longer I practice, the more that I don't work with them. It doesn't matter about me not wanting to work with my ancestors. They come over. They're like, how you doing? Did you forget something? Hello? So you have to acknowledge them. It's not a matter of not acknowledging them in certain things. It is best to, in one of the things I'm initiated in, which is not an ATR, I have to chant certain names. I'm not going to get into what that means, but some of the people in this chat may know what I'm talking about when I say I have to chant my lineage. The thing is that there's not an option not to say those names. That's why I'm making a differentiation. Ooh, I'm getting drunk. Between commercial hoodoo and actual, what I believe is root work, because honestly, you can't do it after a certain point or for certain things without knowing that you have the support of certain parts of your family. There's not just generational and ancestral damage and wounds. There's generational and ancestral power. And that can come through the people who are tied to your line and tied to the land where they have been buried and tied to the land where they may have been birthed by that midwife who did know magic and said those things over that child and gave that child a name that no one else will know.
Kirk's going to come to hibachi with us, and we're not going to eat in the back.
No, he's not.
My husband took my Smirnoff.
He always got something to fucking do.
Exactly.
Never goes
so
up.
Let's wrap this shit up because I got to pee.
Yeah, basically, the length of this show is determined by his bladder.
Exactly. My bladder says I got to piss, so let's wrap the shit up.
I want to thank both.
It's hot.
I want to thank Kenya Koviak from the Detroit Conjure Festival. And she's also, is there anything else you want to mention that you do? Because I don't know what I'm allowed to mention.
Oh, I do the Michigan Witches Ball,
Fabulous.
The Midwest Witches Bazaar and Conjure Fair, the Wandering Goddess Festival. I write for Pagan Business Network and a random bunch of other stuff that I get involved with, as well as the Great Lakes Witches Council Good Witch Bafana program, where we give out holiday toys to children. It doesn't matter what holiday is at winter solstice it is.
Good works.
Wonderful.
And Candelo Kambisa,
absolutely,
of the Mile High Conjure Gala.
Kambisa.org.
Kambisa. Yeah, well, what's your website, Kenya? Do you have a website before we...
You can find them online at MichiganWitchesBall.com. You can find the Detroit Conjure Festival at my Facebook page, and it'll give you links. And the Good Witch Bafana program, that website is going live. You'll see it on my Facebook. So, and that's usually going to be on the page for the Great Lakes Witches Council as well as his own site. Wandering Goddess is his own event.
And Candelo Kambisa, KIMBISA.com or .org.
No. It's Kambisa.org. Yes, that's my website. You can find out everything that's going on with us. But before the Mile High Conjure Gala, of course, we have Hex Fest coming up, and we have the St. John's Conjure Weekend. So we got to fill up those seats first, and then we'll talk about the Mile High Conjure Gala, where we all go and have a wonderful time in beautiful Denver, Colorado. Sen Moise is going to be joining me, Professor Porterfield, Michelle Jackson, Beverly Smith. Ifa Ibeyu is going to join us for the first year and actually be a presenter. Man, I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone there. I'm looking forward to seeing you two at Hex Fest and at the St. John's Conjure Fest, because, man, we're talking about New Orleans, baby. It don't get no better than that. Okay?
Not that right.
All right. So
thank you, and Sen Louise and myself, Christian Day. We'll be back next Monday. Good night, everyone. Enjoy.
Good night,
and share the show.
Blessings to you.
Share the show.